Welcome to 15-minute battles, where we demolish history's biggest conflicts in just 15 minutes. We dive deep into the world's most pivotal military clashes, from the ancient battlefields of Marathon to the complex strategies of modern warfare. The leaders, who were the legendary generals and forgotten heroes commanding the troops, and finally, the outcomes. If you love history, military strategy, and learning something new quickly, you are in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another historic clash.
For 50 years after their defeat by Hannibal's nemesis, Scipio Africanus, Carthage was a shadow of its former self. Stripped of its empire, its military crippled, it was a client state of Rome. Yet, it was a ghost that haunted the Roman Senate. Carthage's incredible talent for trade meant that even in defeat, it was rebuilding its wealth, and this terrified Rome. One man, the influential statesman Cato the Elder, became the voice of this fear. No matter the topic of debate in the Senate, he would end every single speech with the same chilling phrase, "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be destroyed. It became a drumbeat for war, a promise of annihilation. In 149 BCE, Rome found its excuse. A border squabble between Carthage and Rome's ally, Numidia, was all the pretext they needed. Rome declared war. But this wasn't like the previous Punic Wars. This was not a war for territory or influence. It was a war of extinction. Rome's opening move was pure deception. They demanded that Carthage hand over 300 children of noble families as hostages. The Carthaginians, desperate to avoid war, complied. Then, the Roman consuls demanded they surrender all their weapons and armor. With heavy hearts, the Carthaginians turned over 200,000 sets of armor and 2,000 catapults, leaving their city defenseless. Only then did the Romans deliver the final, unthinkable ultimatum. The city of Carthage itself was to be abandoned and demolished. Its people were to be relocated at least 10 miles inland, away from the sea that was their lifeblood. It was a death sentence for their culture, their history, and their identity. Faced with this impossible choice, a slow cultural death or a swift, violent one, the people of Carthage chose to fight. What followed was one of history's most incredible feats of defiance. The city gates were slammed shut. The entire population mobilized for war. Men, women, children, and the enslaved worked day and night. Temples were turned into forges, public squares into armories. They melted down statues for metal, and in a legendary act of sacrifice, the women of Carthage cut off their long hair to be braided into ropes for the new catapults they were building. The defenseless city was rearming itself from scratch. For the first 2 years, the siege was a disaster for Rome. The armies they sent were poorly led and undisciplined. Carthage's massive walls, some of the most formidable in the ancient world, held strong. The city was supplied by sea, and its defenders, now fighting with the ferocity of the doomed, repelled every Roman assault. Back in Rome, frustration grew. The war that was meant to be a swift execution was turning into an embarrassing failure. So, in 147 BCE, the Roman people took an unusual step. They elected a new consul, a man technically too young for the office, but one who carried a legendary name, Scipio Aemilianus. He was the adopted grandson of the great Scipio Africanus, the man who had defeated Hannibal. Scipio Aemilianus was the polar opposite of his predecessors. He was a strict disciplinarian who immediately whipped the demoralized Roman army back into shape. He understood that brute force alone wouldn't break Carthage. To take the city, he had to cut its lifeline, its connection to the sea. Scipio's plan was audacious. Carthage's naval power was centered on its incredible harbor, the Cauthen. It was a circular military port, connected to a rectangular merchant harbor with a narrow channel to the open sea. Scipio set his army to an immense engineering task, building a massive stone and earth mole, a sea wall, right across the mouth of the harbor. Thousands of legionaries worked tirelessly, dumping rock and rubble into the sea, slowly closing the gap. It was a monumental effort designed to seal Carthage in a tomb and starve it into submission. But the Carthaginians responded with a stunning countermove. While Scipio was building his mole, they were secretly digging a new channel. From the side of their military harbor, hidden from Roman view, they cut a new exit to the sea. In an act of unbelievable industry, they had also built a brand new fleet of 50 ships from within the besieged city. One day, the Romans looked on in disbelief as this secret Carthaginian fleet sailed out of its new channel, taking them completely by surprise. Victory was within their grasp, but tragedy struck. The Carthaginian crews were inexperienced. They hesitated, failed to press their advantage, and after a brief, indecisive engagement, they returned to port. The element of surprise was lost. Scipio quickly blockaded the new channel, and the noose around Carthage tightened once more. The city began to starve. By the spring of 146 BCE, after months of starvation and relentless pressure, the Romans finally breached the city's main walls. But this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new kind of horror. What followed was 6 days of the most brutal urban warfare the ancient world had ever seen. The fighting was not in open fields, but in the narrow, winding streets of the city's residential district. Roman legionaries had to fight from house to house, room by room, against a population that had nothing left to lose. The Carthaginian homes were multi-story apartment buildings. The Romans would capture one, only to be attacked by defenders in the next, who would lay planks across the alleyways to cross from rooftop to rooftop. Frustrated and brutalized, Scipio gave a horrific order. He commanded his men to set fire to the buildings to clear a path for his troops. The city became an inferno. The wooden structures went up in flames, trapping thousands of civilians inside. As the buildings collapsed into the streets, the Romans used the burning rubble and the bodies of the dead to create ramps for their siege engines. For 6 days and 6 nights, the city was a charnel house, filled with the sounds of battle, collapsing buildings, and the screams of the dying. On the 7th day, the fighting stopped. A delegation of Carthaginians emerged from the Boursa, the city's citadel, and begged for their lives. Scipio agreed to spare them. 50,000 people, a tenth of the city's original population, shuffled out into captivity. They would all be sold into slavery. A final act of defiance took place at the Temple of Eshmon, where the Carthaginian commander, Hasdrubal, had retreated with his wife, his children, and 900 Roman deserters who knew they would receive no mercy. As the Romans approached, Hasdrubal, the man who had led the desperate defense, snuck out and surrendered, begging Scipio for his life. His wife, watching from the rooftop of the temple, was filled with contempt. She cursed her husband for his cowardice. Then, in a final defiant act, she threw herself and her 2 children into the temple's funeral pyre. The Roman deserters followed her lead. As Scipio Aemilianus stood on a high point, overlooking the utter destruction of a city that had stood for 700 years, it's said that he wept. He quoted a line from Homer's Iliad about the fall of Troy, reflecting that one day this same terrible fate might befall his own city, Rome. After the surrender, Rome's vengeance was absolute. Carthage was systematically leveled. The remaining walls were torn down, the harbor filled in, the buildings reduced to rubble. Every stone was overturned. There is a famous legend that the Romans plowed the land and sowed it with salt to ensure nothing would ever grow there again. While this story is likely a later invention, the reality was just as final. The site of Carthage was declared Sacer, accursed ground, forbidden to be resettled. The destruction was so total that the Punic language, their literature, their entire civilization was almost completely erased from history. What little we know of them comes primarily from their enemies. With the fall of Carthage, the Punic Wars were over. Rome was now the undisputed, unchallenged master of the entire Mediterranean. The age of the Roman Republic's struggle for survival was finished. The age of the Roman Empire had begun. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history's most epic moments.
And that wraps up today's 15-minute battle. If you want to master more moments of military history in less time, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next 15-minute battle.